What's going on? It's Gemma. Welcome back to my channel. I personally love Twitter. Twitter is the best place to get pop culture updates, news updates, get some good memes. It's just all around good entertainment from the platform. And on top of getting all that great entertainment, there are communities that I love to interact with and be a part of. And one of my favorite communities in particular has been being a part of Tech Twitter. But from the first couple of weeks of me interacting and being active in this community, I started to notice that there were a couple problems, things that rubbed me the wrong way, but honestly, it didn't warrant a video or a post or anything like that because every community has its problems. So why nitpick, especially when you just joined? I wanted to get the full positive experience of connecting with people and having a great time. But during these more turbulent times, I've noticed that some of these problems have gotten even worse, have become more exaggerated because of what we're going through right now. There are a lot of things that rub me the wrong way in this community, but the main thing that I want to talk about is complacency and how complacency is dangerous within the software engineering community. There's a really big sentiment in the community that software engineers or tech companies shouldn't consider its work political or even get involved in social conversations like what we're seeing in protests right now. But I think that hesitation of not wanting to get involved in more serious political conversation all is rooted in complacency, where people, specifically software engineers or people who are making a lot of money from the tech industry, feel very comfortable and feel as though they shouldn't really need to talk about what's going on in the world, which I personally find very concerning. And just as a disclaimer, I'm not talking about every single software engineer out there. The software engineers, or even the people who are a part of the tech industry that I'm talking about, are the people that I've seen on Tech Twitter who want to continuously fight for the idea that tech isn't political, or fighting for human rights is not on the shoulders of companies. It's not the responsibility of companies or individual software engineers to be advocates and talk about these issues, which I find to be very, very scary. The idea that people can be comfortable being complacent during what's going on right now in our country stems from an enormous amount of privilege. Software engineers and people alike get paid so much money, and this creates a lot of financial freedom for this group of people compared to the average American, right? You can invest more money in expensive hobbies or even go out and travel more because you have more financial freedom. And I think oftentimes this financial freedom can make us feel as though because our lives aren't directly being impacted by recent policy or protests or whatever may be happening in the world, it might feel as though it's not really our place to kind of get involved in what's going on in the world. If it's not directly affecting me, I'm not going to really put myself out there and directly affect other people. But again, that whole thought process of it's not hurting me, it's just hurting them, coming from a huge, huge, huge place of privilege. And the really interesting about this is that there's a huge theme in the tech industry where we want to practice empathy and understanding the user and creating technology that's going to benefit the user's lives. But if we cannot be critical about the products that we're creating and how it truly affects people's lives through their entire life, not just their productivity or how much time they're saving, then I think that's just a sham. We're just lying to ourselves so we can skirt past the idea that we're making maybe addictive applications that prey on young teenagers or create a gig economy that provides little to no protections for people who are trying to make a second source of income or even a main source of income. We make some of the most socially and culturally defining technology. And for us to not recognize how impactful our work is and just say, oh, we shouldn't get into politics, or oh, we shouldn't talk about what's going on in the world. Again, it's so hypocritical, it's so self-centered, it's so selfish that I'm just worried that people will eat this idea up. And new software engineers who are coming into the community will believe oh yeah, it's not our due diligence, it's not our responsibility to address what's going on. We just write the code. We just mock up the designs. There's a really big thread on Twitter that I loved reading through, and I'll link down in the description box below. But it started off with Chris Ferdinandi. I don't know if I'm saying your last name correctly, but he has a really simple tweet. It says, quote, "I follow you for tech, not politics." And then he has a simple numbered list saying all tech is political, human rights isn't politics, and eat shit. And that's just as simple as it gets. And there was one person in the replies that said, quote, "I'm not interested in politics really just means I don't want to be reminded that my comfort is propped up by the suffering of others that the system I contribute to maintains on my behalf." And that's so important. The typical software engineer, or the most common type of software engineer who believes in this idea that technology should not be political, I want everything to be apolitical, is typically like a white software engineer. And I'm speaking on this from personal experience, dealing with a number of white software engineers who believe that their tech should not be mixed in with current political topics or social topics. But the most important part is that non-Black software engineers just don't want to be reminded that they're benefiting from a system that is propped up by injustice. They don't want to feel like they are contributing to the problem, while in reality, even if they aren't directly contributing to the problem by being overtly racist, they are contributing to the problem regardless by supporting these companies that have built their wealth from this imbalanced and unjust system. And I think the specific tweet really inspired me to make this video about how so many software engineers are just complacent, happy being silent, and happy not really critically thinking about where all this money is coming from, or how they're able to get so much money, so much social capital, so much of anything from a system that doesn't prioritize Black people. But again, complacency comes in and just says, nah, you're making that money. You have that really nice apartment in San Francisco. You're good. Like, why mess this up? Why go out of your way to make your life more difficult? That's not part of your job description. Just write the code and that's it. There's this quote from this article that really resonated with me, and it's from Ritsia Rumi, and she says, digital technology, including mobile devices and apps, platforms, data, algorithms, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and GPS can play a role in addressing or exacerbating systems of inequality. In tackling issues of social injustice, we need to be clear about where and how that's happening. We might not feel like we're working on a Facebook or on an Amazon or in an Uber, where we have direct impact on how people are living their lives. But it is more of a thought process of how we have to be constantly critical of our leadership. We have to be constantly critical of our project and our timelines, so we can ensure that we are making sure that people are having true benefits from our products, not just singular faux benefits from our product. What happened with Facebook is really interesting, and if you're not caught up with what happened with Facebook in the past month, basically Zuckerberg took the stance of saying that he didn't want to censor or fact check or even take down the president's inflammatory comments that were directly attacking Black Americans. And the Facebook workforce was just not having it. They had a massive virtual walkout that led to so many people leaving the company, making public statements, posting on Twitter about how they openly and viscerally disagree with Zuckerberg's decision. But imagine if everyone was just like, well, we don't care. Or our product, like, we're personally not evil, we're personally not making these terrible decisions. I just want to make my coin. I just want to make my money, go back home, sleep at night. I'm not a part of this problem. The way that Zuckerberg and his board and all the executives would take that silence would be as a passive agreement with their decision. Luckily, people at Facebook had petitions and they walked out and left their job because they're directly a part of the problem. But the really important thing to identify is that you might not be directly working for a company that's been making questionable decisions in the past decade, but it's really about the way that you think about your work and how you have to see, okay, it's even down to like the tiny things of like, if you're making a product that works wonders with a fast internet connection, but then you don't even consider the idea that there are people with lower quality, slow internet connection, what are you doing for those people? How are they going to benefit from your free application if you aren't considering them? There's always a thought process that has to happen where you have to be critical about what your product is actually doing for people. So I don't want empathy to be a cop-out. And I feel like a lot of companies use empathy and use the idea of like, we're benefiting, we're helping people level up their life as a cop-out when it comes down to really difficult times where there's Americans outside protesting for their lives and there are people in these companies saying that we shouldn't get involved. We shouldn't talk about politics. I would rather not talk about politics. My technology is apolitical. I think I said my piece. I think that my position is clear that complacency and silence as software engineers is deafening and extremely dangerous, because we're the people who spend the most time on these products. And we've seen in the past that technology has been racist, and we've seen companies work with government organizations that have been obviously sinister. Like, just look at Palantir and its origin story. It was a part of the government. And you can see Amazon working with ICE. You have to be constantly aware what your work is being used for. You might not personally believe that you should be working with ICE or that you should be targeting African Americans, but you're a part of the problem by building out these products regardless. You can't turn a blind eye and say, I'm just here for the tech, I'm here for the technical aspects of working on an application. You're part of the product. You have to talk about the product, you have to talk about the impact, and you have to be present for the entire conversation constantly. And that's how you hold companies accountable. That's how you hold your leadership accountable. I feel like this is obvious, and I feel like whoever is watching this video and actually clicked on this video feels like I might just be preaching to the choir, but I feel like this is something that has been constantly happening in the community, and it's only gotten worse. And now there's just like a nice splash of racism involved where I'm just like, okay, I have to really try to make a video on this and just see if like what kind of thoughts come out in my head. If you want to drop a comment, if you want to have a conversation, go ahead, feel free. I love to talk to people about this. You can also DM me on Twitter. We can have a conversation about this. But I think my stance is pretty clear, but I also don't want to become complacent where I'm just happy with how much money these companies are throwing at me to the point where I feel like I shouldn't get involved politically or I shouldn't support political or human rights movements. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.